It's Mitch back here with Dilly Vanilli for another NFL preview. Quite the change over the course of this offseason. A new franchise quarterback, see you later Josh Rosen, and hello Kyler Murray, and Cliff Kingsbury is their new head coach. So a lot of intrigue, a lot of interest is going into the Cardinals 2019 season. It doesn't, I think, for a lot of people, including myself, have to add up to being a playoff team or being a winning record. But we have to at least see a little bit of the foundation of the future for the Cardinals in 2019. We need to see promise from the quarterback position. We need to see promise from the play calling offensively. And we need to see some of these draft picks kind of unfold before our eyes. It doesn't need to add up to wins, but maybe it might. Dilly Vanilli, what's your thoughts on the Cardinals going into 2019?
Well, the Cardinals are going to be a lot different than they were last year. We got a new head coach. We got a new regime here. And year one starts off, I want to see a little bit of anticipation, a little bit of going forward and putting things in place for the future. I have the Cardinals at a 6-10 record, which is an improvement from the 3-13 last year. I actually have them winning a couple of more games this year. So I'm liking what they're doing. I like what they start with, and I like their starting roster quite a bit. Or I like some of the roster quite a bit. We go into the roster. Of course, the boy Larry Fitzgerald's there for one more year. He's going to give Kyler Murray that little presence, that veteran leadership. Kyler Murray was 7 years old when Larry Fitzgerald had his first practice, so you know how old Larry Fitzgerald is, but he's still one of the best in the game and one of the best leaders there ever has been. Christian Kirk, I think, is ready for a big breakout year in year two, and they add two very young receivers in Andy Isabella and Hakeem Butler that are going to beef up that offense and I think really work with the Cliff Kingsbury style of offense that he wants to go for. Offensive line was pretty bad last year. I don't think they upgraded that much. They got Marcus Gilbert in free agency, but it's still pretty weak, and I think that's going to hurt what Kyler Murray has to do here because he's going to have to run around, which is one of the best things that he does, obviously, but he's going to have to do a lot of work on his own in order to complete the passes that he wants to. But I am expecting almost Rookie of the Year-like stats for Kyler Murray here. I think he's given the tools. I think Cliff Kingsbury is going to throw him the key and be like, here you go. Here's your opportunity. This is your team. Even though this is the first year, you're not going to have everything you want here. You are going to have the opportunities to do so. So I think Kyler Murray set up in a great position. David Johnson really got hurt with the fact that they had a terrible offensive line last year. Hope he bounces back this year because he is a top-tier running back in this game. Defensively, we still have some standout players. Corey Peters, Chandler Jones, sack leader a couple of years ago. I think has the most sacks over the last couple of years or so. We have Jordan Hicks at linebacker. Patrick Peterson. You add Byron Murphy, who I think was a steal in the second round. DJ Swearinger at safety. Robert Alford comes into this team. I really like some of these guys here. I just think that the combination of a really bad offensive line and having to put this in the first year, it's going to take a minute for the Cardinals to be the team that they want to be. But I do think there will be a massive improvement from what they had last year. And I think they will double their win total from 3 to 6 in 2019.
All right. I don't mind it. I don't hate it at all. I am going with the Arizona Cardinals at a 5-11 record, one below Dilly Vanilli. I do feel like they are an improved roster through their free agency acquisitions, through the draft. I do believe that this is going to be better in terms of their quarterback play, possibly also their head coach. I don't think you could get worse than what they had at head coach last season in Steve Wilkes, which he just seemed like he was over his head at that position. But with Kingsbury, I think there's a lot of questions to be answered. He is very young. He doesn't have a ton of experience, and the experience he does have, he hasn't exactly gotten victories, especially with some talented players on his roster. Like having Patrick Mahomes and not necessarily doing amazing in college is a pretty rough resume for me personally. But where I do like the signing is through their offensive creativity, I do believe that they will bring something different. He loves 4 receiver sets, which is very rare in the NFL. I think the Cardinals are going to run more 4 receiver sets in the NFL this year than anybody else. I think that will take time for defenses to study and kind of adjust to. I also believe that this guy being a creative offensive coach coming in at the beginning of the season, he's going to have some wrinkles and some plays and some concepts that are going to be difficult for defenses to handle, which means that I think the Cardinals will be better at the beginning of the year than they are at the end of the year. Personally, I think that we'll see them kind of like the Chip Kelly-esque style where it was like, whoa, what is this? Like, how do we contain this? And then once the NFL starts to figure it out a little bit at the end of the first year, that's when the Cardinals will slow down because their talent isn't the same as some of these other teams. At the same time, the NFC West, in my opinion, is a very strong division. I could see at least 3 of these teams making the playoffs in the 49ers, Rams, and Seahawks. The Seahawks and the Rams both made it last season, and the 49ers are on the rise. So this is a difficult division. You have to play 6 games there. Just an overall difficult schedule. When I look at the roster, I was a huge fan of Kyler Murray coming out. I think he is worthy of that number 1 pick. I think he was definitely the best quarterback in the draft. And I do see many kind of similarities to Russell Wilson in Seattle. I don't think he's going to have that immediate success, though, because Russell Wilson had a team around him that was pretty well built. While Kyler Murray, like Dylan said, pretty rough offensive line. Arguably the worst last year. Justin Pugh is healthier. That's good at right guard. And Marcus Gilbert, like you said, was a nice signing. But outside of those two, I don't really love any aspect of their offensive line on the left side of it. Wide receiver-wise, they're very young. And it takes time for receivers in the NFL to develop and to grow. Of course, they have Larry Fitzgerald. And Christian Kirk could have a breakout season this year. I think he will within this offense. But as for Andy Isabella, Hakeem Butler, these guys are going to take time to develop. Then you look at David Johnson. I think he's going to have a huge fantasy season. He's a player that I would want to have in fantasy this year. But I don't know if that's necessarily going to add up to wins. The tight end position, they added Charles Clay, which isn't a bad backup for Ricky Seals-Jones. Then defensively is really where I'm impressed with what they've done. They added Zach Allen in the draft, which I kind of think was an underrated pickup. Byron Murphy, as Dylan said. They also added Jordan Hicks, who's one of the probably top 10 inside linebackers in the game. Terrell Suggs off the edge, also to provide some leadership. And DJ Swearinger was added late last season, alongside Budda Baker, who could have a big season this year. I think Patrick Peterson being suspended will definitely hurt this secondary and kind of thrust Byron Murphy into a starting position where he probably won't succeed right away, but we'll have to see. I think the defense could surprise some people. I do think that with the improvement, Vance Joseph's going to be the defensive coordinator. He was basically a defensive coordinator beforehand, before he was a head coach. Went to Denver, didn't really go well there, but he's still a defensive first coach. He's a good defensive coordinator. I think he'll bring an upgrade to this defensive unit. And along with the offensive creativity, I think they will surprise some people. So overall, I see it at a 5-11 record. I think the schedule and the division is just too difficult for them to really do any better or to really shock people and kind of make that surprising first-year rookie run with Kyler Murray. But it could happen. I'm not saying it will never, ever happen. It could happen, but the likeliness of that happening is very low.
Yeah, if you look at the schedule, you brought up the division, but you got other games here like the Falcons, the Saints, you got the Steelers, the Browns. It's not it's not going to be easy. I think they can definitely steal some victories. They play teams like maybe the Lions they could beat. I know people are a little high on them, but it's week 1. You never know. You got teams like the Bucs you can win. You play the Bengals. There are some wins that you can get, and maybe even sneak out a couple of victories, maybe even against the Ravens or something like that, and a division win. But it's going to be difficult for them to go higher than what we have here.
Yeah, so that's our preview on the Arizona Cardinals for the 2019 NFL season. I do want to throw out one last name that I think needs to really have a big season, or else we're going to be judging him. And was he a bust? Hassan Reddick is the last guy I kind of want to bring up here. He needs to have a big season. Alongside Hicks, I think he could potentially. He has a lot of raw talent, a lot of talented players with some rawness to them. They're very green, very young, but will that measure up to success in 2019? Most likely not, but in the future, this is a promising football team. So a 6-10 or 5-11 record, I would take as a victory if I'm a Cardinals fan. Bronx, spike the like button, subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos just like this, and comment below your opinion. What do you think? Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? Do you think the Cardinals will be better than we think? Do you think they'll be worse? Do you think they'll be about the same as last year? Let us know in the comments section. It's Mitch and Dylan. Peace out.